It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both President Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Good morning. Craig, I'd like to start with you this morning. I think we all were rather stunned to see this leak out of the Supreme Court regarding Roe versus Wade. And there's a lot of things that are going to be impacted by this. But I am curious, as we kind of continue to do some analysis on the midterm election this November, what kind of impact do you think this will have? Will reproductive rights actually trump the concern regarding inflation, which of course was something that the Republicans were eager to use? Or do you think this is a game changer?
To be sure, this was an unanticipated event, I would say. There's a lot to unpack. Let me start. I want to get to an answer, but let me start by saying, first of all, I'm not a lawyer, but I did read the draft opinion. And it was surprising to me. I didn't appreciate just how, I would say, vulnerable or just how weak perhaps the Roe versus Wade decision was in the context of the way the court functions. It's clear that the court then wanted to do this and found a way to do it and settled the matter indeed for decades about abortion rights. It would be very convenient if this remained a settled matter. That was kind of the way the questions were framed to Supreme Court nominees, but elections matter. And over time, presidents have appointed members to the Supreme Court that held views that now cause us to reach a point where the court seems actually ready to address this issue. And in my reading of the opinion, again, not as any kind of a legal mind or scholar, but as the court is really saying to the American people, look, Roe versus Wade was a legislative action almost more than a judicial action. And that's not what we believe to be correct. And so petition American people, petition your elected officials. They're the ones that have to make laws pertaining to abortion, either at the state level or the federal level, but the decision in Roe versus Wade can't stand. So it's a shocking development. I would say there's four things I'm pretty sure about. One, that we as a country are not in a good position to deal with such a divisive issue. There's more division in this country than maybe if not ever before. Certainly we're at historic levels, and this is going to be very divisive, and it's going to be very difficult to cope with. If the final decision comes in August, it most certainly will affect the election. It is it's in proximity to the election. It's close enough that this is going to be uppermost in people's minds. So I'm sure it's going to affect the election. But the third point is, I don't think we can now tell how it's going to affect the election. I also think, as a fourth point, that voter turnout in this midterm election will probably be higher than we've seen in a long, long time, because for both sides, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, those groups will be motivated to both register voters and turn those voters out. And I think we're going to see record turnouts. That will likely change the shape of some of these races. In politics, there's big issues, and there are always some voters who are single issue voters. In other words, there's one issue so predominant in their thinking that they're going to vote for a candidate who shares their view on that issue. Abortion is like that. Perhaps gun control is like that for some, but abortion is like that. So this is an issue that will have a large influence on the way a lot of voters see things. And up until now, for candidates, people running for office, there was kind of a middle ground. You could say that, you're not prepared to restrict abortion, but you really prefer adoption. And there's a number of other things that you can do. This has taken away a lot of middle ground. I think candidates running for office are going to be called upon to vote, or to declare themselves on one side or another. And I think that's a significant factor. Another significant factor that, again, I've kind of just come to better understand is that times have changed. Over 50%, I've seen in 3 different places this statistic, over 50% of the terminations of pregnancies are done using medication, a pill. Now, some of those pills have to be used in close proximity to conception, but the fact of the matter is, that's a whole new paradigm for us. And the idea that people can actually get medication, pills to terminate births using a doctor virtually means they can go to any state really that allows this and get it. In fact, there's 14 states that are where red states that have laws in the books that protect against abortion. In other words, they're pro-life. There's 15 blue states where there are laws on the books today that if the decision goes through, they will protect the woman's right for an abortion. And then there's 21 states where it's unclear. So each of these states has a different approach already on the books in the event we get the decision in August that we expect to get. We're going to get a decision. It's going to, and in some ways, I kind of wonder about this leak, whether that was designed to prepare us to think through this as opposed to August suddenly be startled by it. But we're going to get a decision that's going to be viewed very differently by different states and affect probably state elections for governor or US senator very differently depending on whether you're in a red state or a blue state.
You know, Al, before this leak came out, national polls suggested that an overwhelming majority of Americans supported abortion rights. And yet when asked in terms of a priority issue, only 16% said that it was a priority in the upcoming election. Once again, do you feel like this is a game changer, or are people still going to be pissed off about how much they're paying for gas?
Well, it could be both. People are going to be pissed off about how much they're paying for gas, but this could also be a game changer. First of all, let me just be clear. I think if this decision stands and the court doesn't change its mind from where it apparently was in February, I think it's the wrong decision. Women should have legal access to abortion. But as this discussion has indicated so far, abortion politics are really complicated. It's not a simple thing. People aren't just for abortion in all cases or against it in all cases. Most people believe that Roe versus Wade is correct, and women should have access. But also, you know, most people believe that should not be unlimited. There should be limits on it. So it's not quite so simple. I think the best analysis I've heard from somebody who I believe really does understand it and whose business it is to study the impact of politics, of issues like this on politics every day, came from Amy Walders, who's head of the Cook Report. And Amy said, basically, I don't know. You know, it's because she said the politics is so complicated on abortion that it's hard to tell what's going to happen. Look, the Democrats are hoping that anything that happens over the next 6 months changes the political climate for the better. This has the potential, particularly with college-educated voters who were very key to the Democratic success in 2018 and very key to Biden's victory, to energize them in a way they might not have been energized going into the 22 election. So it helps gets them out, and it reminds them of a lot of things they don't like about the Republicans, and helps them vote Democratic. That will help the Democrats. As I see it, going into 2022, the Democrats have two things going for them. One is Trump's continuing negative impact on the body politic and on the Republican Party. And secondly, an issue like this that has the potential for energizing a big block of voters who might not have voted Democratic this fall and getting them into the Democratic fold. But we also have to remember that there's an awful lot going against the Democrats. Political climate is not very good for Democrats. History is against them. Biden's approval rating. And probably most important, because it's related to Biden's approval rating, are the issues, which seem to be inflation, crime, and immigration, which seem to be the most salient voting issues. And those don't usually cut for the Democrats. The voters are in a sour mood. They're in a sour mood on the economy. So without changes on those fundamentals, I'm skeptical that much change will, and I'm skeptical that it's going to change a lot, that they're going to change. I think that I guess I'm skeptical that there'll be any big shift in vote for the House. In the Senate, it's a different matter, though, because if you have states like Ohio, where, sort of a nutcase got nominated for the Republicans, and we have a good Democratic candidate. In Pennsylvania, you have the same possibility. In Georgia, you have the same possibility. If the Trump nominees continue to win primaries and they're so far out of the mainstream, that gives us a chance to hold on to the Senate. So in that case, any help we get from an energized, college-educated electorate would be very helpful. But it's also important how Democrats handle the issue of abortion, because, as I said, it's complicated. And people favor Roe versus Wade. It's about 70%. But they also, I think majorities want some limitation on abortion. So I sort of go back, and Craig will remember this, to the formula we used in 1992, which I think is still a pretty good message: legal, safe, and rare.
The other thing that I noticed, Craig, is that the Republican response so far has been to just, some people would call it a distraction, but they are much more worried about the leak than the results of that leak. Is that a strategy?
But I think it is kind of a diversion, and it's a diversion to buy time. It's not clear that this draft decision will be the ultimate decision, but my sense is it may undergo some word changes, but the direction is probably pretty well set. And I think Republicans are really looking at, where this is going to have an impact and how they should respond, and are appropriately being cautious, because it will definitely be a motivating factor to turn out Democrats or independents also who are pro-choice. You look at even here, to bring it more locally, in our state of Michigan, we have a governor's race. There's been a sense that a Democrat's going to win that race. And Maryland is one of those in the 15 states that have enacted legislation that would provide for abortions, with exceptions, as Al points out, in the event that there is a Supreme Court decision. So the question is, well, will Republicans be able to muster more support, more enthusiastic voters for a Republican candidate? And I don't even know if the leading Republican candidate, I don't know where she falls on this issue, but if it's a candidate that is, pro-life, that'll bring out a lot more Republicans who might have thought, well, this is going to go to a Democrat anyway. And that's how this varies state by state, I think. I just think, I think Amy Walter is right. I think, we're in the position now of, it is too soon to tell. It's going to have an impact. It's going to impact different states in different ways, different races in different ways. I do believe it's going to turn out a lot more voters, though, and that is probably a good thing, because ultimately it looks to me like it's going to be the voters and elected officials that have to decide how we as a nation deal with this very, very difficult question.
Al, you have the last word.
Well, I think the Republicans focusing on the leak it's pretty obvious they want to divert attention from the potential decision. But, you know, it's a short-term strategy. It's like trying to figure out who's going to win the first quarter of a basketball game when it's decided in the last quarter. You know, there's going to be a decision. And the reaction after the decision comes won't be to the leak, it'll be to what the decision is. So, you know, you may gain a few points in the short term, but I doubt it. You know, the map of the country is really interesting. I saw a map the other day of states that basically protect abortion rights and those in which they're either now severely limited or will be. And it's really fascinating because it's the coasts in Illinois that are the places that, you know, it's sort of like the country. And that are the places that protect abortion, which are the mostly blue places, Illinois, of course, too. But the rest of the country, you know, the abortion rights are going to be in grave jeopardy if it goes to the states in most of the rest of the country. And that's not very different than the overall political divide in the country right now, which is, and if you think about, you know, the Senate with where a majority or even in a 50-50 Senate, the Democrats represent about 45 or 55 or 56% of the voters. And part of the problem is that a lot of the, in these congressional races, is that a lot of the pro-choice strength, the greatest pro-choice strength, are in places where they're going to win anyway. And a lot of the sort of pro-life strength are in states that Democrats have to make gains in to keep control of the Congress and keep control of the Senate. You know, so I don't know how it's going to impact. One thing I am sure of, though, it's going to, a lot of groups on both sides are going to make a lot of money on this issue. You know, I mean, the fundraising is already beginning. You know, again, that probably will pretty much wind up neutralizing each other. But in the end, Craig said something at the end that's important. I mean, turnout in midterm elections is very important because it's down. You know, there's a theory that, not always right, of course, but that Democrats do well in high turnout elections and presidential elections. And I think now, you know, 7 of the last 8 times we've won the popular vote, which would indicate that nationwide we have a slight advantage. But unfortunately, most of that advantage is in New York, California, and Massachusetts. And so if you go to the rest of the country, you know, the Republicans actually have an advantage, overall advantage. And what that means is that an issue like this may help. It may help with independent voters in some of those red states, but we're going to need a lot of help because the map doesn't work for us.
Well, my only prediction is that this is not the last time we will be talking about this.
Right.
Al Fromm and Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We'll see you next week.